Hello, this is NewFilmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. I am Talis Correa and we are here in South Park Center and we're going to talk about a very, very interesting film called For Kicks. But first, let's take a look at the clip.
Eugene Thomas is this really important piece of the puzzle in the legacy of Black martial artists on film.
I always knew that I wanted to go to China. That first year I had no idea where I was going. Even when I got to the airport, I didn't know where I was going. Taxi picked me up and said, "You want to go to the YMCA?" I said, "Yeah, I go to the YMCA." I didn't know how to speak the language, didn't know what type of food to eat. My mind was just focused on one thing, headed to Asia to do films. And opportunity presented itself.
And we're here with the director of the film, Fahey. Thank you so much for coming. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Talis?
I'm doing great, especially now that you're here with this tattoos and printing and strong
with
biceps showing.
Slender, supple muscles.
I'm ready to go. And this shirt, what is the story of this shirt? Tell me.
I'm rocking a Boris Powell, which is super nice. He's a designer. He's in WeHo right now. Originally a Chicago fashion designer. Does Oscar gowns and fun stuff like that. You know, no big deal.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Exactly.
I came into town and I was like, "Boris, can you hook me up with some fits?" He's like, "I got you. Get over here." So he got me a really beautiful blazer for tomorrow and then just cute little thing.
Nice, nice. For Kicks is a really cool, really interesting film. For those who haven't watched, tell us a little bit about it.
So in my documentary, I follow an old dear friend of mine, Eugene Thomas. He's a semi-retired security guard living in Chicago who in the early 80s started dozens of low-budget ninja movies produced in Taiwan. And these are the most awesome schlocky action things you'd ever see. And initially, it was just going to be a short film to celebrate my buddy. Yeah. You know, it's like a year after the pandemic, we've had strikes in our industry, stuff is slow. And I'm like, oh man, I just want to grab an interview with my buddy and do something creative. So I caught this magical rooftop interview with him and he just poured his heart out. And it was so vulnerable and candid and honest. And there was so much more there than a 3-minute short film could ever cover. And then I realized there was even a larger conceit. There was these Black martial artists in the 70s and early 80s that inspired him. And all of them, instead of coming to Hollywood to try to break into the industry, decided to travel to Hong Kong and the Philippines and Taiwan and brave a new trail. And in the process of doing that, fused two genres to create a new style of action film. It's like this fusion of blaxploitation and the kung fu film to become something new. And by doing so, they became pioneers of martial arts and inspired a lot of new stunt people. They heavily impacted the way stunts are made in movies that we see today, and even informed what we see in the UFC and how the UFC even started. Yeah,
no, that was really cool. And then you went with the intent to do like a 3 minutes film, and then you ended up with an over an hour short feature film documentary.
Yes, I mean, it started with a really cool little montage, and it was funny. And when I say these low-budget ninja movies or schlocky, I mean they're like the best you could ever aspire to with a low budget. They're shooting on 16 millimeter. Yeah. It's run and gun, but they're doing things in the camera on film that really changed the game on like what we can do for stunts.
And it was really popular back then, right?
Well, we're talking about like the VHS boom, right? In the 80s, where you could go to these markets like MIFED in Milan. People from all over the world would go there, and you didn't have to have your movie necessarily have a theatrical run to make a fortune on it. You could go sell in all the major markets, get it translated into every language, and everybody's just buying voraciously at video stores. And renters market's huge, and people are making money hand over fist. Yeah. So a lot of these low-budget action films became hugely successful all over the world.
It's crazy. Like nowadays, people don't even know what VHS is, right? VHS are, and it was like a huge proponent of our industry. all over the world.
I mean, you do have, okay, I don't live in LA anymore, but I mean, I kind of low-key love Vidiots in Echo Park. It's the coolest thing ever. They're like this curated place where you can go in and you can watch VHS movies.
Oh, is that
projected there? It's the coolest.
Isn't it Echo Park?
Excuse me, Vidiots in Eagle Rock. I highly recommend you.
It's
check
like
it out.
idiots with V. Vidiots.
Yes, it's
I
so
love
good.
it.
I mean, there's other there's other small curated theatrical venues that are popping up in LA, and I think it's such a cool thing.
Where do you live now?
I live in Iowa City.
Iowa.
Yeah, grad school. I decided to take a little detour. I'm also working as a playwright for a theater in Chicago right now.
Look at you.
Shooting some commercials here and there in between, so I kind of got my hands in.
You're living in Iowa, doing plays in Chicago, and watching videos in Echo Park / Eagle Rock.
Yeah, in both, just depending on which place you want to go to. And, you know, kind of in between commercial work here and there sometimes. Writing voraciously. Earlier this year, I was staying in Altadena for a few months on a writer's respite. I wrote 2 feature films from January to March, which was great. And then one of them I love so much, and it's part of an anthology series. I just felt like it was a bigger world, so I started converting it into a novel.
Wow.
So I'm just turning it into something different. And it's just kind of writing itself.
You're already telling us a little bit of your journey, but I'm curious to see, like, in a zip, how you got to this film. Like, how did you start in filmmaking career and make it up to the point of this film?
You know what's funny is, like, this film, which, you know, it's kind of coming towards the end of its festival run. And I'm so happy that the LA premiere is with NewFilmmakers LA.
Nice.
I think I love what you do. As far as a curated monthly screening showcase, you do more for filmmakers than I've ever seen major festivals do. Really, so my hat's off to you for that.
NewFilmmakers LA has a very special programming and curation and opportunities for filmmakers at a lot of festivals.
You're so legit. And the things that you were able to do to bring us as filmmakers together for these virtual panels, it was really nice to see and inspiring that you go the extra mile like that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you.
But this film, For Kicks, origin story kind of begins with my career's origin story. So 20-something odd years ago, you know, when I was an assistant editor working at this place, Swell Pictures in Chicago, on the 18th floor of the NBC building. I remember one morning I had to get Starbucks for some, like, Leo Burnett was in. I can't remember what commercial we were doing, but so I'm there at like 5 a.m. with the coffee and donuts and yada, yada. And I go past this elevator bank, and there's this tall, handsome black dude. And he's doing some kind of like karate moves at the elevator bank.
At the elevator?
Yeah, he's like a security guy, just standing there doing like a karate kata.
Just like a normal day.
So I do a double take, and then I go back, and then he turns and he goes, "Oh, you caught me, man." And I'm like, "Well, no. We got to talk about this." So he kind of explains a little bit, doesn't go into huge detail, but we became buddies. Maybe a month or so later, we had lunch a few times. His name's Eugene Thomas.
Okay.
And we're sitting there having lunch one day, and he goes, "Hey, how's that, assistant editing going? You learn how to edit okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's, I'm doing my best." He goes, "Would you mind editing like a martial arts reel for me, you think?" And I was like, "I would love to help you. I need to keep learning."
Yeah.
So he goes, I'll bring you some stuff tomorrow. I figured he was gonna bring me like some high 8 tapes of him in his garage doing some stuff just to make like a show reel for him.
Yeah.
He comes with his bag full of VHS tapes with all these big Chinese characters on them. He's on the cover of all of them. Super chiseled, tall, tough, young, spry black dude, like the star of all these movies. And I'm like, what
the hell
is this? So then, I go into our video core, digitize all this footage and throw it in the Avid, way back when.
Yeah.
And I'm learning how to edit on watching on these schlocky ninja movies, throwing in star wipes and whatever, just because I'm learning, And it was, I think I used the Kill Bill song. Dun, dun, dun. Just made this fun reel. And then Thomas, because I really liked him so much, I had just finished film school and I was kind of doing some spec spots because I wanted to direct. And so I would cast him in my spec commercials and stuff like that. Yeah, anything. If I did a short film, he'd always have something. Because he had cachet. I'd make a short film. I'm like, I got this low-key, super famous dude coming in, And my friends would love it.
What's your name, your star name?
Yeah, he was huge. He is huge to me. He's such a wonderful guy. And then I became a director and an editor, signed to a few companies. I was out here for a while doing that thing. And We lost touch for a decade. And then post-pandemic, the algorithms sort of brought us together, you know? And I just saw his face. I'm like, God, I need to message him. So I shot him a message, and we just started having this really friendly conversation. And we met in Chicago. I was in Chicago on a job. We met for breakfast one morning. It was supposed to be like a quick hour. We ended up talking for like 3 hours. And at the end of that conversation, I go, God, you know, I wish I would have had a camera, because the things you say are so wonderful, and I love how candid you are with me.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I mean, if you ever want to do that,
Let's go.
I trust you. We could do that. So then I had maybe, this was in 2023, in like June or July. I had a gig in Chicago. I had a great camera. And I talked to my buddy. I'm like, can I use your rooftop? He's like, sure. And I called Thomas. I go, can you meet me here? I got time. I have this gear for an extra day before I have to return it. We could just knock out a quick interview. And so the rooftop interview in Four Kicks is like this magic moment where he just gave so much of himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was really magical. We just had because it's like the camera didn't exist. It was just two friends talking.
And that was in 2023?
Yes.
Wow, so it's very recent.
Yeah, and then I cut something, and I really liked it, but it needed to be more. And my friends loved it. They're like, this is great. And they're like, you're going to try to make something more of this, though? I was like, well, there's so much more interview, and he tells me so much more interesting stuff. And so I started compiling a lot of the archival.
And you already edited most of his footage back when you were assistant editing from
Oh,
those
yeah.
films.
I mean, I've known it. I mean, I've been editing for 20 years, so I mean, I know... I've edited several feature documentaries. I've edited a bunch of narrative stuff, and I direct, and I kind of got my hand in all the things, as you do.
Yeah.
When you're an independent filmmaker, you have to.
Yeah.
And editing this for me was really personal too, because I love the guy, and I really wanted to, honor him. And then it just turned into this bigger thing where it's like, well, you know what? I'm going to need to get a different interview, because there's things that he's saying that I need answered from some other people, and I made this for like nothing, and it was all like favors when I could find him. If I had a gig and I had a camera, I could get an interview with Eugene Thomas. If I needed to grab another interview, I talked to a friend of mine who lives in London, and I had to get Toby Russell, who was in these films with Eugene. Toby Russell is Ken Russell's son. He did like Tommy, the Who's Tommy, that movie.
Yeah.
There's a weird psychedelic director from England. And Toby's great. So I was able to get a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu studio to donate the space.
Shout out for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people right
which
there.
I love. I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is amazing. And they're the most humble people. Anybody who rolls on the mat are the most chill, humble people you'll ever meet.
I've played Jiu-Jitsu before.
It's amazing, right?
It's amazing.
You get it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, literally, I've never met a person who does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who's a angry or mean person.
Yeah.
They're all very kind and humble.
Yeah.
Which I love. But they could also like break you in half.
Exactly.
Which I think maybe that's
Which
why.
I love that too.
I think it's cool, like that they know that they, I think there's a quiet confidence in that you learn. It's funny because when we get to talking about Ron Van Cleef, he really goes into that. Let me tell you a little bit about Ron Van Cleef.
Please.
This is a detour. So Ron's 81 years old.
Okay.
The fact that we have him in the doc is amazing to me. I was working on this Teach for America thing, and the producer of it, like I would be traveling around the Midwest. I was going to Omaha, Nebraska, and Toledo, Ohio, Cincinnati, and interviewing these teachers who did amazing things in 2023.
Yeah.
Well, the producer was in Hawaii doing an interview. And I said, "Are you on the Big Island?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Listen, I got 2 interviews I really need you to grab. One is Ron Van Cleef," and he didn't know who that was, so I gave him the dish. And then this professor that I found, Bryant Murakami, and it just so happens Ron Van Cleef and Bryant Murakami live like not that far from each other. So this professor, Bryant Murakami, I find this white paper on how blaxploitation and kung fu films influenced what we know about the UFC. And I was like, this argument is brilliant to me. So I read this like PDF white paper online. I'm like, who is this guy? So I track him down, send him an email. It takes him a while to get back to me. And we start talking. I go, "Look, I'd love to get an interview with you. How I'm getting an interview in Hawaii yet, I don't know. I was hoping I could get out there, but I can't rate. Getting money is tough."
Yeah.
But my buddy was out filming interviews for this NEA thing we were doing.
And he was in Hawaii.
And he was in Hawaii. He had a great camera. And I said, "Can you just come over to this one location, knock out these 2 interviews?" Of course. So I hopped on a Zoom call and interviewed Ron Van Cleef virtually before I got to meet him, and interviewed Bryant Murakami that way as well.
Wow.
So 2 back-to-back interviews that really created, if Eugene Thomas's story is the body, Ron Van Cleef really and Bryant Murakami are kind of the spine.
Yeah.
And then there was one other person that was really important. I found this amazing filmmaker from Chicago, Floyd Webb, who's this amazing Black filmmaker who's like international. He did a ton of prolific filmmaking in Africa early, super heavy indie guy, super smart and generous with his time, and really knowledgeable about blaxploitation films, martial arts, and Chicago's history. And he knew about Eugene and his story. He knows a ton about Ron Van Cleef. And he was just this brilliant through line for the doc. And so between Toby Russell, Bryant Murakami, Eugene Thomas, and Ron Van Cleef, I had what I needed. And then the last person, oddly enough, I didn't get until January of this year. I was able to get Carl Scott.
You have a very go-getter and let's make it approach. You're like, can you just knock out this interview real quick? Like you make it seem so easy. Like, cause a lot of I'm a filmmaker, a lot of filmmakers watching here. Like every time you're like, oh, gotta pull up a set, you gotta roll a camera. Like our minds start reeling like, oh, I need a DP, I need that. Like a lot of things start, I don't know, it comes a lot of like anxiety to open up a set, and the way you speak about it it makes it like I just need you to knock out this interview. Just like, yeah, just knock out the interview. It's like a camera and a mic. Like,
well, you know how that starts. So I think it starts with, none of those are transactions. It's never like I'm using somebody for something. They're all relationships. So I think it all starts with if you have a want and you're expressing a want to try to get something, it's never going to work. Yeah. And it's never worked for me. But I did that early in my film career. I think I was overly ambitious and I tried, and I felt like that I feel like you run into too many walls that way, and instead just feel really organic and genuinely care about the people that you want to work with and get to know them, and they'll care about you too. And that works. And also treat no as the second best answer, and don't get beat up because it's not a rejection. There's no such thing as rejection. It's either a yes or it's a simple transaction of words. But it's a relationship that counts. Yes, no, irrelevant. But I think that's a person that you want to be involved with in some way or another, regardless.
I totally agree. But I think what I'm talking about is like your approach. What I got is not a barrier for you to just to go and do that. Like it's something that you want to do and you want to try to get it. It's not like, there's a lot of difficulty that comes like hearing you going through your projects.
Yeah, it felt pretty, for this it was frictionless because again, no didn't matter because the things that I got made sense. And the things that I didn't get, I didn't need.
Yeah.
And not for lack of effort. I definitely tried to get a lot of other things for the doc, but I wasn't going to force it and I wasn't going to push hard for something that I didn't feel would be a necessary waste of my time when I'm already focused on the edit.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying the process of editing, and I'm enjoying the process of talking to these people who I'm interviewing, who I'm putting in the edit, and I'm building relationships with them. And, the fact that Ron Van Cleef is flying here tomorrow for the screening from Hawaii.
Wow.
Which is wonderful. And again, he's 81 years old.
Yeah.
The guy he's the oldest dude to ever fight in the UFC. At 55 years old, he fought Royce Gracie in the Octagon in UFC 4. Lasted 4.5 minutes with him, which is crazy. He tells me he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu right now. He's going to get his black belt when he's 85, and he's looking forward to that.
Wow.
How cool is that?
I love it.
And he's like the most genuine, soulful, kind guy. Eugene and I went at the New York premiere. Ron was there. It was at this big festival called Urban Action Showcase, which is awesome. It's Times Square, AMC 25, beautiful venue. And it's attached to it is a huge action con. So there's lots of people who work in stunt coordinating. There's all these comic book people. There's people dressed up as ninjas and fighters from Bruce Lee lookalikes, the whole thing. It's so great. And when Ron walks through there, people treat him he's grandmaster.
Yeah.
They treat him with such reverence. And again, I may have told this to you before we started rolling, but Eugene Thomas is kind of low-key like the searching for sugar man of Black martial arts cinema. And they all know him, but he's been so far off the radar for so long that when we went to Urban Action Showcase and we were walking through there, people would stop. There's this a stunt coordinator who does works on all the big films in New York. and they're having a rooftop demonstration on how to do knife fights. So there's rubber knives. You could go out and learn how to get a knife out of somebody's hand and do a fake fall on a rooftop in Times Square.
wow.
It was amazing. And so he's doing this, and we walk out to observe, and he stops. He goes, hold up. And he walks up to Eugene. He goes, Master? And then Eugene's like, He goes, he bows and grabs his hand and puts it on his forehead. And he goes, you're the reason I'm doing this.
Wow.
I didn't even know you were still around. And it was so touching to see that. And I think that for Eugene, it was transformative. And I think also something that's really important for me and why I care so much about this doc is because I gave Hollywood a shot. I was here for 5 years, and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. I know lots of people who've had similar.
Yeah.
Some of my friends have made it, and I love it for them.
Yeah. And there's a lot more about film than just Hollywood, right?
That's right.
Like filmmaking doesn't start and stop here.
No,
in
you
this
can
town.
go anywhere and do it, but there's still
If you
a
go
thing.
to Cannes Film Festival, like any
Yeah.
festival outside of our circuit here, you see the amazing types of film and amazing filmmakers that is outside of Hollywood circuit,
100%.
which is thriving, doing really well.
But there is a thing where you kind of come out here and you try to cut your teeth, and then it doesn't happen the way you want it to, and it kind of hurts a little. And that happened to him. Eugene Thomas made international notoriety for as an action star. He was hugely successful in Africa, all through South Asia, everywhere. But here, and he built he had momentum enough to get to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And was getting cast on like Jean-Claude Van Damme films and would audition, but he never made the cut. And he struggled with it, and he ends up going back to Chicago and focusing on security, meets his wife, and then instead of focusing on, aside from doing my films, he really didn't do many films or anything at that time. So I was kind of his little last link to film, but he wasn't pushing anything.
Yeah.
And instead at that time he was focusing on meditation, his martial arts, the inner journey, and then kind of growing this jazz musical experience and kind of fusing the two together. He's a jazz flutist, jazz saxophone player. So he's found this way to kind of take music and martial arts and use them in a way that kind of invigorates his chi and supports his well-being. And I think that's a beautiful thing about him.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful.
this full circle thing, to see him get noticed for the thing that he kind of felt disenfranchised out, means a lot. And I'm really happy that the world gets to see him with the stock.
No, you did an amazing job. And Sean, what's next for you? Like, what can you see? What is your next work that you are going to put out? What are you working on?
I'm pitching a couple of narratives. I don't have any docs up next per se, but I am pitching some feature scripts right now and some TV, and finishing a play that I'll be directing in Chicago in the spring, which will release in a theater in Chicago in the summer, and hopefully finishing a novel in 2025. I'm moving right along.
Busy guy right there.
Those are my things. Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much for stopping by, having a conversation with you. And it was amazing to have you here. And we're looking forward to see more of your work, and hope you can stop by more times.
Really appreciate your time, Dallas. Thank you. And NewFilmmakers LA is fantastic. I highly recommend submitting your stuff to them. They'll support you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is Sean, and we're signing off. Thank you so much for watching.